And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us, and one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight's episode, we're going to be joined by my guest, Amber. Amber has had some experiences, and she wanted to come on the show and share a little bit about them. She's never been on a podcast before, so definitely appreciate her coming on here and sharing that with us tonight. Before we bring her on, though, if you've ever had an experience and you would like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, there's a couple things you can do. You can send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Just make sure to get a message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. If you would like to help the podcast out, please share it around. Word of mouth helps the podcast grow. If you've been doing that, just know I appreciate it. And for anyone out there listening, just share it around. You might find a new potential guest by sharing it out there. You can also help the podcast by leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast at. So just click the 5-star button. It helps me. It helps the show. Makes it more discoverable. If you would like to join the Patreon, there's more information about that in the show notes, but you get early access to all the episodes up to 2 months early. They're all ad-free. If you're like me and don't like hearing all the ads, that is the best option to go with. It's only $1.99 a month, so worth checking out. You can also find me on all the social medias. Make sure to give me a follow. You can hit me up on there too if you'd like. But we're going to go ahead now and bring Amber on and get the show started. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Amber. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Sure thing, no problem.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
I'm not a very exciting person, but I'm just a mom and a cake decorator, and I live in the mountains of Virginia right now. And I am actually a medium, but I guess that's probably another story for another day. That's a recently new development, but yeah, I'm just kind of a sort of a boring person, I guess. The way I look at it, I don't do anything exciting and just, here raising my children in the woods. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. You said in Virginia you didn't happen to get any damage from the recent hurricane, did you?
We got some, not anything too terrible. We had some giant trees go down in the yard, and thankfully our house didn't get hit, but it was close, but luckily we were safe.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. I know it's, from at least what I've seen and what people have said, it's actually a lot worse than what's being led to believe in some of the areas, but I don't, like I said, I only see what's on the internet, so who really knows?
Around here, we had a lot of flooding, and actually the area that I used to live at, I call it the farmhouse. I lived in a farmhouse that was built in 1885, and that was in another little community about 45 minutes from here. And that entire area, someone told me recently, is gone. It's completely flooded. Everything's gone. So I have not driven out there yet to see it. I try not to go to that area because it still creeps me out pretty bad. So I stay away from it, but supposedly nothing's there anymore. So
I never thought much about a hurricane making so much damage inland that far, especially in the mountains, because you think mountains are above, but if water coming down the valleys, it makes sense why it would flood, but still very strange.
what did they say? Asheville was like 300 miles from any coast and over 2,000 in elevation,
Right.
and it's gone. Asheville is demolished.
Yeah.
It's all under mud at this point. So that's terrifying. Asheville was a beautiful place. I used to go there for shows and stuff quite a bit.
I don't think I've ever been there, but I saw the photos of what it used to look like. Wouldn't even want to know what it looks like now.
It's just mud. It's
Yeah.
just mud. The whole place. It's sad.
Well, if you would like to get started, you can go right ahead and I will let you know and the audience know. I might not say a whole lot. I've been under the weather the last few days, so my voice is already starting to go out on me.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to hang back a little bit on this one and turn it over to you.
Oh goodness. Okay. I'm not even sure exactly where to start because I've seen so many things here, and I guess I'll just say first of all, I have 4 children, and the oldest is almost 30, and the youngest is almost 13, and the middle 2 are 20 and 21 now. And when we first moved to this area in Virginia, that was 11 years ago. So my oldest son was living in an apartment over a bar outside of town, and he's a very enthusiastic, kind of dramatic kid, and he would say, he saw this, that, or the other outside of his apartment in the woods, and I'm like, okay. He would just tell me these stories, and one of them being that he and his girlfriend were sitting out on the deck of the porch, and like I said, the apartment's outside of town, so it's surrounded by woods like everything else around here. And I think they were having an argument or something, and they were just in a heated discussion and not paying attention to anything else around them. But all of a sudden there was a noise like crashing through the trees, and they both stopped and turned and looked. And he said there was something just huge. He said, I couldn't even begin to tell you what it looked like or what it was, just like sort of humanoid shaped, but taller than these trees that were outside of their apartment, not even that far from them. He said it's almost like it just kind of stood up out of the trees and was taller than the trees. And he's like, he said that he could see like arms and a head and shoulders and everything, and it was all taller than the trees. And I don't believe him, because and I should know better than to not believe him, because it turns out just about everything he says that he sees, I end up seeing later. So later on, we were having a party I lived in this really old farmhouse outside of town, and we were having a party, just like a little birthday party, and things were winding down. And my middle 2 kids were in the backyard, and about 6 friends were still there, just sitting around a table outside, just having a drink and just, still talking and everything. And my cousin was leaving, so I went to walk her to the car. And as I was coming back, I heard this, that everybody was just hyper and freaking out. And, I'm like, guys, what's going on? And they said they saw, as soon as I got around to the front of the house to walk her to her car, something stood up from the shadow of the barn. And it was like much taller than the barn. It's like a 2-story hay barn, just, like a normal size barn. But whatever it was, they said stood up from the shadows and was much taller than the barn. And it was like a humanoid figure, just stood straight up and just pranced off into the woods. And these are kids, like my middle 2 kids are not, I was always like kind of, into weird things, and, like I liked stories about, hauntings and spooky stuff and all that. I liked it. I didn't know how much I believed in it. I was really skeptical, but I liked that kind of stuff. My middle two kids were never like that. They're very grounded, very, they don't believe in any woo-woo thing like ghosts or demons, or if they don't experience it, they don't believe it at all. They don't, just buy into anything. But for them to be rattled, and, every single person there, all six of the other people that were there saw it. So that rattled me, but I didn't get to see that one. And as a lot of things that my kids get to see, I haven't, but I've experienced a few really scary things around here.
I think, like,
So
I was
go
gonna say,
ahead.
like, the things you said that looked humanoid and everything. What exactly? Like, can you describe how it appeared?
The way they describe it, both of them, from the two different sets of people that saw them, my son and his girlfriend, and then the other kids that were at the party, they all said it was just basically a really tall, skinny, like if you took a normal person and just stretched them, in every direction, and just naked and sort of like a maybe a grayish brown skin color, but just like really long arms, long fingers, like a long neck, like an elongated large head, a really long body.
And could they see
And
eyes or a mouth?
I remember my son definitely said it had a face, and he was like, the eyes were big and dark, and it had a face. It wasn't quite human, but features in the correct places. But he said it definitely wasn't a human face, but like a humanoid face.
Hmm. There's a lot of different stories that get tossed around, especially in those areas of what they call pale crawlers. But those typically aren't super tall, I don't believe. But the description seems to match that. And I know there's a correlation with some people think that pale crawlers are actually what the Native Americans were referring to up north when they called them Wendigos. The
Okay.
the story of the Wendigo has been bastardized by white settlers over the years, but basically a Wendigo's depictions from the Native Americans was a very slendery person because they were a human at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and they're
Mm-hmm.
more of a spiritual thing now, but they became like a cannibal. They ate the flesh of one of their siblings or relatives, something like that. I don't know the exact thing. I'm sure I'll be lectured about that too. But
Right.
and they were just like almost like walking corpses to an extent. Like their bodies morphed into like really pale, lengthy, big wide mouth with no lips because they ate their lips off. Like that is the actual depictions of what Wendigos used to be. Now you hear Wendigo and everyone thinks of the big monster with the big antler head, the dead deer head,
Mm-hmm.
and everything. That's not what they originally were. So I've always wondered if people that seen these things are actually nowadays they see stuff around. Well, I think it was the '60s. The Dover Demon was basically described as a bulbous headed humanoid looking thing. It almost looked like gray alien, in my opinion. But
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of crawling on the edge of the road. But again, same type of body, long fingers, long arms. And that's what people say today. They see a lot. And a lot of people call them rakes. Well, rakes were made as a creepypasta. But I think they were influenced by what people call pale crawlers. And I think pale crawlers
Mm-hmm.
are influenced from something probably like the Wendigos. So I think all these things are somehow intertwined one way or the other. And again, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a guy with a microphone. But in my opinion, that's kind of what I feel like maybe some of these things correlate with.
I I've heard so many different stories, and it's hard to imagine that there's not some kind of connection. And like you said, with the Wendigo being like a spiritual thing now, that's what I'm wondering, if it's almost like is it an interdimensional kind of creature? I mean, I don't know. Is that even, is that even a thing? I mean, I don't know. It's definitely interesting to contemplate, but it's so hard to nail down a concrete answer about any of this stuff, and that's what's frustrating to me, because I want to know, specifics. I want the truth, and it's so hard to find. Like you said, the depictions of the Wendigo with the antlers and all that. I've looked up all that. I've done so much research, trying to figure out what we're seeing and what we're encountering, and trying to figure out, for one thing, the validity of a lot of this stuff, because my kids play in the woods, and if there is something legitimate out there, I want to make sure that my kids are safe, so I've looked into this a lot, and there's nothing concrete, and there's just, stories and tales and speculation,
Right. Yeah, there's never going to be anything definitive when it comes to these things, because if you look through history, there's been reports on all sorts of paranormal activity. There's been cryptid sightings. There's been all sorts of these sightings, but for some strange reason, there's never been any physical proof. At least not
right,
that we're aware of.
right. Not a body, not, just nothing.
So you mentioned being skeptical earlier. I'm very skeptical too. And for me, it's like seeing is believing. Like, you have to be able to see something in order to believe it. Otherwise, it's interesting to hear everything, but you still remain a little bit, well, at least that's how I am. Just because I think people see a lot of stuff, and I don't necessarily know if everything that they're seeing is 100% what they're thinking it is. It could be misidentification, or it could very well be what they're actually saying it is, because who knows?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Even when I do see something, if there's no one else there that sees it with me, I'm totally willing to say my eyes played tricks on me, or my imagination was, just, I was scared and my imagination ran away with me or something. I saw something that was something else. And just last night, me and my daughter, she swore she saw a mountain lion. So we went out in the woods to look and see what we could find. And we went out in the woods with a flashlight, and it ran right into something. And there was two eyes looking back at us. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. Here's a mountain lion. But it turned out to be a deer, but my imagination at the time was like, that's the right size and shape, and of course it's got to be a mountain lion, until I figured out, until it turned its head the right way and the flashlight caught its body. But, I'm willing to say something could be there, and I'm willing to say something, things do exist. But even if I see something, I've got to make sure somebody else sees it too. And that's definitely what we're seeing, and, talk about it and make sure we saw the same thing. But I've actually only, as far as that kind of thing, I've only seen something like that one time. And even when everyone else around me has said, they've seen this, that, or the other, or they heard something, I've only seen something like that I can recall right now one time. And that was not too long ago. We had just moved into this house that we're buying, this cute little house in the middle of like 12 acres of woods. And we're literally surrounded on all four sides by these great big trees, and it's wonderful. But one night, not too long after we moved in, I had a really weird experience, and I still have no explanation for it. But when we first moved in out here, something just felt really off outside, and everybody felt it. Like, if I would go out to my car at night to go somewhere or something, as soon as I would get to the point of the driveway where the light didn't shine from the front porch, and the like the darkness of the woods was right there, I would feel terrified. And I've always lived in places with woods and they don't bother me. It's just like, oh, that's woods and they're dark, no big deal. But when we first moved in out here, I felt so scared of these woods and could not figure out why. And one night I woke, I was having a dream that I was in those woods. And as soon as I realized I was in the woods in my dream, I said, this is not right. I don't go in these woods at night. I'm scared of these woods. And there were like other, I say people, but I couldn't see anyone else around, but there were just other somethings around me that I could sense. But like I said, it was dark. So I just knew that there were others around me. And I said, well, it's okay that I'm out here because my fiance's with me. And then one of them said, that's not your fiance. And when I looked over at him, the light of the moon or whatever was on him. And I realized it wasn't him. And I said, what's going on? And oh my goodness, hang on just a second. When I said that, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. I had an incoming call somehow. Sorry about that. Anyway, when I said, what's going on? I said it in my dream, but I was speaking out loud and it woke me up. My own voice woke me up. And I said, something's wrong. And my fiance was asleep with me and he said, why are you scared? And I said, oh, it's nothing. It's just I'm trying to get used to these spirits around here. And then I was so confused because I was like, why did I say that? That's not even what I was thinking. That's not what I was experiencing. Why would I say that? And I said, something's not right. And I got up. And this was exactly 2 hours after I had went to sleep. And I take sleeping pills to go to sleep at night. And these pills knocked me out solid for about 4 hours, and at least 4 hours, but it's like a 4-hour minimum. Like I'm dead to the world. So I woke up, I went to sleep at midnight and woke up about 2, and I felt like I had been asleep forever. And I felt really disoriented and almost like I had been away. You know, that feeling of like when you go on vacation, you're gone for a couple weeks and you come home to your house and it just feels like you haven't been there in a long time. I don't really, it's kind of odd, So I felt really odd like that, like I hadn't been here in a while. And I got up and I walked through my house and everything seemed normal. And I went and checked on both of my kids and they were asleep. Everything was fine. And I said, there's got to be something. There's got to be something. I know there's something. Something's not right. That was a weird, that just didn't feel like a dream. And I told my fiance, I'm going to go look out back and, I'm going to go look outside and see what's going on. And out front looked normal. And as soon as I turned the corner to go to the backside of the house that's not lit up, he and I both saw this really tall gray being in the backyard, and like a humanoid shaped being, like much taller than me. And I'm almost 6 foot tall. And I didn't stop to see what it was, to explore it any further. It just made my blood run cold. I turned around and went right back in the house and locked the door. And I just sat by the window looking out for the longest time. And the only thing we could see that was out of the normal was there was like a pale blue light down in the woods behind the house. And there's no houses back there forever. So I have no idea what that was, but it was just really strange and uncomfortable. And I'm really glad my fiance was there with me so he could, confirm that we both saw the same thing. But if not, I would have just said it was, again, like I was a little freaked out. Must have been my imagination, but he saw it too. And I just have no answers for what it was. I just know what I saw, and it was terrifying. And I can't even explain why it was terrifying. It just something really weird that should not have been there.
How long ago was this?
Um, we moved in here in April, so
Not that long then.
right. I'm gonna say like the end of May, beginning of June, somewhere around there.
Okay. So pretty recent. Um, with this thing, could you give any like, did it have any like sort of features to it, or kind of just again like just the same thing, almost like what you described earlier, like the tall gray, slendered, lengthy
Mm-hmm.
body?
Yep. Long. I remember just like the fingers, like the arms hung down at the side, and just the fingers were just too long, and it just made me really uncomfortable. And it almost felt like maybe it in my mind. I feel like maybe it glowed a little bit, but I mean that could have been the way the moon caught it, But it just it just wasn't. It wasn't human, and it wasn't anything I've seen before. So I have no idea.
Did it go anywhere, or did you just
No,
did
I
you go
went.
somewhere? I was gonna say,
I
did
went.
it go somewhere, or
No.
did you go somewhere?
It was just standing right at the edge of the woods, like right in the tree line. And I mean, there were no trees blocking. It was like standing like on our side of the tree line, just standing. And I didn't stick around to find out. I mean, most of the time, like I said in the beginning, I mean, I'm a medium, and I say that cautiously because I am not the type of person that would believe in something like that, and wouldn't believe in myself to say that I was a medium unless I have experienced that for 100% like confirmation. And so being, having those abilities means that I've encountered a lot of things in the spirit realm, and so I'm not scared of much. I mean, like I said, my daughter said she saw a mountain lion, and my son had said he saw one a couple nights before that. So I said, okay, cool, let's go find the mountain lion. Not many things scare me. So when I encounter something that makes my blood run cold, I'm out of there. I don't stick around to ask questions because if it makes me scared, I'm out.
You'd mentioned earlier about the UFO sightings. Was that anything recent too, or is that a while back?
Um, all of those have been. It's been a while. I mean, I think
Okay.
the first time was, gosh, 20 years ago, and I've seen things off and on throughout the years, but I haven't seen anything recently.
Okay, because when you mention that and the descriptions I keep thinking of, it I don't want to say one way or the other that what you're seeing is something because I don't know, but they have that same description of different version of the Greys, but there's a taller race of them supposedly.
Hmm.
Like obviously everyone knows like the shorter 4 foot tall ones, and there's
Hmm.
also supposed to be some that are like 7 foot tall.
Right. Yeah, and I've looked into different extraterrestrial stories over the years, and that is probably the last thing that really I'm that's my holdout with me being able to say I'm not scared of anything. That's the last thing that I'm truly terrified of. It used to be spiders and bears and the woods and the dark, and I've worked really hard to overcome all of that stuff, and but I'm still really scared of anything extraterrestrial. And I think it's I think the reason that I'm still scared is because of the experiences that I've had, and the things that I do remember. I'm in every encounter that I've experienced, the little pieces that I do remember are I'm out of control. I have no control over the situation, and like my my freedom and my liberty and my safety are just taken away from me. And there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. I mean, if somebody breaks into your house, you could defend yourself. You can call the police, you have weapons or whatever. But when it comes to anything extraterrestrial, there's just nothing you can do to stop them when they make up their mind that they're going to, abduct someone or, come in your house or anything. I mean, there's just nothing that can be done. So that's my last holdout. And I'm so scared of anything extraterrestrial, unfortunately, because I wish that I wasn't, because I wish I could explore more into it, but I'm terrified. I don't mess with it.
I feel like that could be anything in general, though, too, not just extraterrestrial. For me, it's I don't like going to these haunted places or whatever because I'm afraid I'm going to bring something back that I'm not intending to bring back. And
Oh, I love it. I love it.
for me, it's like, if you know there's something screwy going on in these places, and then you're going to go kick up that hornet's nest, you might get stung. So I don't do it.
True. Yeah. And I have been, I have been haunted by things, and that kind of stuff just, unless it's something particularly nasty, it doesn't really scare me. For some reason, being able to communicate with things on the other side, I rarely encounter anything that really terrifies me. I mean, when you can feel something there that you can't see, it can definitely be unnerving, but I can feel their energies, and a lot of times their intentions. I can even feel when they're lying and pretending to be something else or someone else or whatever. So that kind of thing, it rarely bothers me. I've encountered some things that just made me feel really uneasy, but I love spooky places. I love haunted places. I go to people's houses that are haunted, and I'm able to tell them, well, this is who is here, and this is why they're here, and this is what you can do to make peace with them or whatever, or able to cleanse energies and that kind of thing. So I'm not scared by much. So the ET encounters that I have had are so unsettling and so unnerving. And I actually, one of the reasons that they are so unsettling to me is because, and I can send you some pictures if you want, I have scars all over my back. And I think there's 5 or 6, and they always, they're almost like butterfly shaped. And and some of them are really big. It's like maybe 3 inches long. And I have no idea, but I started to correlate. I started to realize, like, I would have these dreams that I was taken, and then I would have a scar. And I have no explanation. I have no no injury. Nothing happened to me. There's just no reason for me to have these scars on my back. And I actually got a great big tattoo all the way across my back to cover a lot of them up. But there's just no reason for them to be there. And one of the last ones, my kids, I had some stepkids that lived in the farmhouse with me, and there were 7 kids total that were in the farmhouse. And every morning, the littler ones would go out to feed the chickens, and they didn't tell me this until later, when I was talking with my youngest daughter about the scars on my back. And I told her, because I didn't discuss this with her when we lived there because she was younger and I didn't want her to be scared. But I told her there were some things that I couldn't remember. And I feel like something may have you know, taken me or something. I can't confirm that, but, you know, I would dream about it. And then I would, you know, wake up with this stinging on my back and realize that I had another scar. And she said some of her experiences out there, you know, when they would go out early in the morning to feed the chickens, she said that she would see like footprints, like my footprints in the snow, and they were barefoot. And because in my dreams, I would be standing at the edge of my yard staring into the woods, and then something would just snatch me and I would be gone. And I would wake up later and I would be in bed and I would be cold. And my ex-husband at the time said multiple times he would wake up throughout the night and I would be gone. And, you know, like just not in bed, you know, and when he would wake up a little bit later as I would be getting back into the bed and I would be just cold. He said it just felt like you had been standing outside for whatever reason. And anybody that knows me knows I am so cold natured. And the last thing I would do was go outside barefoot for any reason. And I certainly wouldn't just, you know, run around outside in the snow barefoot in my pajamas, you know. And my daughter said the weird thing was that there was only one set of tracks, like one set of my footprints in the snow, and they would just go out and there were no tracks coming back in. So all of that was so unsettling to me, and I have no answers. And I've, you know, I actually have a cousin who's a hypnotist, and she just got her master's in whatever it is, like she's a master hypnosis person or whatever the title is, but yes, yes. But I told her recently it would be so cool if you would come see if you can hypnotize me and see what is there in my memory. Because I looked into like Betty and Barney Hill. I heard a podcast that had their story on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's fascinating. And, you know, they went to the hypnotist and they got some answers and a lot more questions. But I thought that would be really cool if I could find out what, if anything, this means. I mean, maybe I was sleepwalking and just, you know, walked outside in the snow barefoot. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. And, you know, I stay skeptical because I really don't want to believe anything until I've seen proof. But I just think it's just a lot. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of dreams, a lot of just things that don't make sense. And so I'd really like to get answers.
I think when it comes to hypnotists and everything like that, I don't want to say skeptical, but I am to an extent, because I feel like maybe they unintentionally put in a memory, and like they're asking questions and all of a sudden you're having like a false memory, and I don't want to say it's like being fed to you, but I also I would be nervous of finding out stuff that you don't want to remember.
I'm skeptical as well, and I fully plan on recording our session and, you know, letting her know ahead of time, like, you know, don't ask me any leading questions. You know, even if we don't get to an answer, no answer is better than like a false answer. You know, don't lead me in any direction. Just ask me, you know, what I see and what I'm experiencing, and just let me have those memories if that's what they truly are. Because an irresponsible hypnotist can really mess you up, and I don't want that either. So
I'm just a paranoid person in general, so I would be very leery of going to someone. And I've interviewed hypnotists before, and I've said the same thing, is like, I would just be afraid of not so much what they would find out, but at the same time, like I don't necessarily believe it. So I think for me, I wouldn't be able to be hypnotized because I don't necessarily believe that they could do it, if that makes any sort of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
Yeah,
you have to
I
be able to
totally do.
accept that, and for me, I don't necessarily accept it.
I'm really skeptical. I'm not skeptical that hypnotism is a thing and that it works and that it's real. I'm skeptical that it's going to work on me. So
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll just fall right under and spill all my stories, and then I'll have answers, which would be great.
Yeah, I don't say one way or the other. I don't recommend it to people, but everyone's entitled to do what they want to do. I just say make sure you're careful of what you start looking into because you don't know what you're going to find.
Hmm. Yeah, that is very true. And I've actually realized recently I've got sort of some blanks from my childhood, and they involve the woods behind my house. So that's what led me to contact my cousin and say, hey, like, could you come stay for a weekend and let's, dig into this because, I want to know, like, because I feel like we can't heal from anything traumatic unless we can remember and process those things. So I just feel like there's something there under the surface that I'm not remembering, and maybe it just has something to do with this extraterrestrial. Maybe there's some childhood trauma in there that I've blocked out. I mean, who knows? But you know, I have extremely vivid dreams of things that just feel so specific, and I wonder, why would I dream like at 13 years old I dreamed of grays coming into my room and just lifting me out of bed and just taking me and like through the wall, and there was nothing I could do about it. And I had no fear of extraterrestrial. I didn't even believe in aliens and any of that before then. And I have no idea why my mind would conjure something like that. And I would just really like to know. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the things that we've seen in these woods out here. And I don't know. I'd really love to have answers.
You mentioned going through the wall. That stands out to me because I've talked with other people and they've said the same exact thing of they've been taken from their bed
Mm-hmm.
and they get taken through the wall. They don't like go through a window or a door, and they like literally like somehow just travel through the actual wall, which
Oh,
is
wow.
strange.
Mm-hmm.
Like how a solid person can just move. So it makes me wonder if they're not taking not so much the person, which they would have to in this extent. Like if you have scars and stuff, obviously it's a physical thing. But I've always wondered maybe if they're not taking them like consciously, like
Right. Like taking your spirit or whatever.
right. Which
Right. Wow.
I think that's why a lot of people claim that these things are actually demons. Which that's the big thing I've noticed here in the last couple of years is everything's Nephilim or demons. It seems like those are the two
Right.
the
Like,
trendy things that get tossed around. But
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't know. But when it comes to
So,
that, it just makes me wonder how that's possible.
exactly. Yeah. And I had never thought about it that way, but I mean, that's possible. I mean, if we're talking about things that are impossible and supernatural, I mean, could that be a possibility? It seems like it could. I mean, goodness. Um,
There's a lot of rabbit holes that can go into, but
mhm. Yeah,
it's it
and I've seen things like I learned to astral project in 2020 because the world was shut down, and what else did we have to do but meditate? And I learned to astral project, and I've seen things when I astral projected that were ET related. And so maybe you're onto something. Maybe it's like they're taking our spirit and not our body in some instances.
How did you learn to astral project? I've talked to several different people about it, and each way seems to be starts with meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you started to?
Yeah, I just Whitley Strieber, I think I want to say Whitley Strieber's book is kind of what turned me onto it, because I had seen so many UFO type of things in the sky with other people, and so I can't, like I said, if someone else is there and can see it with me, then I'll say, okay, we had an experience and we saw something. And I had seen so many of them during the time period right before I moved to the Appalachian Mountain area. That when I moved here, I started looking in the library for books on, alien encounters and that kind of thing, and ran into one of his books and started, and he had something about astral projection in it, and how, and I honestly can't remember how the two were connected, but I thought, well, if that's where he went to look for answers, then that's probably what I should do. And I had never really meditated. I daydreamed a lot, but I never meditated. So I thought I better give this a try and see what happens. And I have been able to astral project really easily. And I can't explain how or why, because I'm not that devoted of a meditator. I don't spend, hours and hours and hours doing it. Like some people are just, so devoted. I'm not. And I was just able to, I kind of rip open my third eye, honestly, and just was able to see things. Like I would meditate and I would start to see like a light inside my mind, I guess. And if I focused on that light, it would go away. So I would focus on the center of the center of my forehead. I would just focus everything on that black space in the center of my forehead. And then I would realize that I was somewhere else and that I couldn't feel my body anymore. And I suffer from chronic pain almost all the time. And I've had several injuries to my back. So I hurt all the time, but I know that I'm leaving almost immediately because I can't feel anything anymore. Like my body stops, it stops hurting. I can't feel anything. And I had to really train myself to make my body keep breathing while I was not in it anymore. And that was the biggest challenge, and still is my biggest challenge, because I'll realize that I'm just holding my breath, and that'll kind of pull my focus back. Like, you have to learn to breathe. But it was just easy for me just to slip out of my body and just go places. And sometimes I don't really do it on purpose. Like, I don't go anywhere on purpose. I can't say, well, I'm going to go to Walmart, and just astral project into the grocery department. I just let go of my body and just leave. But where I go isn't really in my control, unfortunately. I've actually had some people on Facebook, multiple people that I didn't even know. We just happened to be in the same groups, and multiple people have messaged me and said, you were in our room last night. Me and my wife both saw you, and I have no idea why. Not a clue. Absolutely have no control over where I go, but I just go places. And I've seen extraterrestrials in that space of wherever I go to. And those are really scary when you see them on the other side in that area. It's like you're there with them, like instead of them coming here, you're there. And I don't know how to really articulate that very well, but it feels like I'm in the wrong place and I should not be there. And I have to pull myself out of there immediately when I encounter that, because that is very scary to me.
I've heard from other people too, and like you're not the first that has told me this, but they say when they astral project, they do run into these other beings. And it makes you wonder, again, if what we're calling extraterrestrials are actually from a different reality rather than from outer space. So maybe they're like interdimensional beings. Because if you're astral projection, I feel like you're not really traveling through this, like through space. You're more or less traveling through some weird realm. But
I feel like I've traveled to places like here on this planet, just like in a field of wildflowers, and have no idea why I'm there. But I've also traveled to places where I was actually in space, like from my understanding, my point of view, in a black space with stars and other planets. I've seen a purple planet, and I've seen a red planet, and I've seen ships, and just so I've gone different places here in this, what I recognize as, this planet. And then I've just been in places I could barely describe because they just seem so alien to me. So I don't know. I mean, and there again, I'm skeptical. So I could say, well, I'm just stepping out of my body and hallucinating. I have no idea. I really don't.
yeah, it's hard to understand, especially if one's actually astral traveling, how you can correlate that into like our reality, because the whole concept to me is just bizarre. But
It is. Even after you experience it, it's bizarre. And when I say stuff like this out loud, I'm like, do you realize you kind of sound like you should probably be institutionalized, But I'm like, well, and the thing that I always go back to is like, the things that preceded this, I did not experience alone. All of the encounters, like, ironically, it was one night me and my oldest son and a few of our friends were watching The Fourth Kind, and I'm terrified of The Fourth Kind. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is horrifying, because it's got the real footage in it, and I'm like, it's unexplained of what it is, and supposedly the woman's daughter was abducted and she's never returned, and to me that's just horrifying. So, and I realized that he had never seen the movie, so I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to put this on and watch it. And we watched the movie, and he's like, that's stupid, that's not real, I don't believe in that. I'm like, okay, well, believe what you want to believe. And immediately after, him and his friend went outside to smoke a cigarette, and they're standing out in the yard, and then he starts yelling for me. And he has this dramatic way of being like, mom, you have to come look at this. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And he's a very dramatic child with a huge imagination. So there was just always something with him growing up, And so I go out there and like, okay, what are we in for now? And he points over the top of a tree in the yard, just a random tree. And he's like, look. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, don't you see that? And I said, well, that's a star. Okay. He's like, yeah, but watch it. And I'm like, okay. So this star is just a normal looking light in the sky like anything else. Everything else surrounding it looks exactly the same. It's a little brighter, but we're standing there staring at it, and I'm bored, and all of a sudden it moves, but just a little bit, it just moves up. And then it stops. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, what is that? And And him and his friend are like, we've been watching it do that for like 10 minutes now. It'll move just a little bit, and that'll move just a little bit. And I'm like, what's that? And he's like, over there's another one. And we realized there were 3 different lights in the sky that were just a little bit brighter than the other ones, and they would just move a tiny bit. And as we're standing out there focusing on them, it's almost like they came like more into view. And we realized that there were 3 like ship looking things that were like triangles, but like they flew over top of the house and like came together and made like one giant triangle together. And they were so close we could see like the littler lights inside of it and like the details and stuff. And like I said, I'm not going to believe anything unless there's somebody else there to witness it with me, because otherwise I'm just going to say I had a hallucination and oh well, you know. But all 3 of us stood there and watched this thing right over our heads. It was 3 different lights from different points in the sky that lit up and came together and formed a triangle. And when it took off, it actually like, it didn't fly with like the point of the triangle in the direction that it was going. It was like backwards. It was like the flat part leading the way, if that makes any sense, which I thought was really strange.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I you know, because there are triangular shaped like jets, sort of triangular, but you know, but it flew like a jet flying backwards, which made no sense to me at all. And jets don't like hover, as far as I'm aware. But you know,
The Harrier jet can.
Oh, does it? Okay.
That's it's been around since I think the early 90s, if not the 80s, but there is a jet that does do a hover.
Okay. I'm not sure if 3 of them can come together and form one, but
No,
that would
no.
be cool.
No, but there is jets that do that. I mean,
Right.
I think it was in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie True Lies. They had one in there towards the end of the movie where he's shooting from the bridge. I think he was supposedly flying a Harrier jet or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I
I'm kind
do
of a
think
movie
there's
nerd.
technology. Yeah, yeah. I definitely, I, I like, I like looking into the connections um, that you can come up with different movies that, you know, people say they're telling us the truth and they're putting it in plain sight, you know.
Right.
So a lot of times, you know, it's hard for me just to relax and watch a movie because I'm like, is this programming? Are they showing us things, you know? And
Desensitizing.
I've just become so suspicious, I guess. It's, you know, I guess you could say an awakening, but, you know, just kind of realizing that everything I've ever known was a lie. And, you know, that actually started with me in nursing school and hearing the truth about certain things from doctors. And I was, you know, blown away. And that's when I started digging into different things because I'm like, well, if they're lying to us about this, what else are they lying to us about, you know? And I guess I took the same stance when looking into the extraterrestrial thing and haven't been able to find a lot of connections with, you know, the supernatural stuff and the, you know, but I'm still looking, you know, I'm still putting things together, but, you know.
With me being a conspiracy person, and I know I'll get harassed for not asking, but what did you find out when you're doing nursing stuff? What was the medical field lying about?
Well, one of the ladies at the clinics, one of the doctors there, there was like a clinic on the grounds of the high school, and she had seen, it's one of those like stop in if you've got a sore throat or something, you know, basically to
Right.
get a note for school or whatever. So she knew that I had kids and she had treated them, you know, off and on for a couple little things. And she said, when you're putting those away, she said, read the inserts and tell me what you think. And I was like, all right, I sure will, because I'm so curious about just about anything. So, let's go. And I did, and I was like, these are poisonous. I went to her, I was like, just basically, these are poisonous. And she was like, yeah. And she said, and I know that's a totally unpopular thing. And, I get screamed at a lot by different people because, I don't my kids anymore, but that's when I stopped vaccinating my kids. And, like tetanus, you cannot get tetanus from a rusty nail. You cannot get it from a broken glass. There's one way to get tetanus, and you're not going to prevent it with a tetanus shot either. So, you have to actually have an open wound, and your open wound has to come in contact with the infected feces of an animal that has tetanus.
Right.
And that's it. And I had to research that quite a bit when my daughter stepped on a rusty nail and drove it halfway through her foot. But yeah, you know, for one thing, there's a lot of lies that go into the medical field, and this is a big portion of that.
I will just say right now that that word that you're using, I'm going to edit out because I have been banned for certain words that get said, and that is one word that does. So I'll do
Yeah.
I'll leave it. I'll leave it for the audience to figure out. I'm pretty sure it's common knowledge that they can figure it out, but just because of the AI censor bots and everything, I don't feel like being banned again on certain channels because
Isn't it crazy how that works? But yeah,
we don't have freedom of speech.
Right.
They claim we do, but not when it's misinformation. Well, a lot of the stuff that I've been harassed about isn't misinformation. It's strange how that works, though.
The system is it's very powerful, and they definitely don't want people knowing the truth. But here's the thing about the truth. At this point, it hardly matters because people have been so programmed and so brainwashed that they are completely unable to accept the truth. If you could spell everything out for them, you could lay it all out, write it out, draw them a map, show them proof, how all of the things are interconnected and intertwined. And the majority of, especially the American population, unfortunately, they can't accept it. It will not compute at this point. So at this point, I don't know what they're afraid of because it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to believe it anyway, except for the people who already do,
I had an episode get banned because they were talking about stuff like that. Now, the concept of the episode was completely out there, but the fact that those things were brought up about something that happened in 2020 and people got sick, people died or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that is why he thought someone had passed away and that whole thing had gotten taken down and banished, and just because of someone's opinion.
Right.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to have those.
I was like, I'm not even the one that even said it. And then I tried to edit it out and I tried to re-release it and I got banned again. So it's just like, whatever. So there's certain trigger words that set off AI bots, and the C word is one of them. The V word is one of them. So.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's other platforms I could be on. Like if I'm on Rumble, then it wouldn't matter. But if I'm wanting to be on the old tube over here, then it has to be, I have to comply with their standards of bullshit.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
But no, that's it wouldn't be Tinfoil Tales if we didn't have some little weird conspiracy stuff here and there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I'm sure you know. I'm sure you've seen it as you're, digging into different conspiracy theories. So much of it is connected, and the closest thing that I've found to explaining like the connection between like the supernatural and extraterrestrial, um, there's a I used to work in a factory for a little bit, and it's mindless, numbing, god awful work. So I would listen to books while I was working, and I came across this book from this lady who her house had been wiped out in Katrina, and they gave her a certain amount of money to buy a house, and the only thing she could afford was this house was being sold well under market value, and it was in Ohio on the river, a beautiful place. And she purchased this house, and I think it was just her and her son and her dog. And along the way, she found out why the house was for sale for such a low price, because the previous owners and all the previous tenants had such disturbing experiences there in the house. And as it turned out, according to her book, there's excuse me, a portal in the house, and this portal brings forth supernatural things as well as extraterrestrial things. And she actually does like haunted tours and sleepovers and stuff, because she can't live in the house anymore and she couldn't sell it. So she had to recoup her money somehow. And that was how she chose to do it. Instead of, fighting against the supernatural aspect of the house, she just decided to embrace it and make her money back that way. But the book is pretty fascinating, and it goes into detail about how these portals, bring things through. And I thought, that's the first time I've ever heard of anybody reference those two things together.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe there's some legitimacy to it. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense in a way, but like I said, I'm skeptical. So, I mean, I'd have to, dig further into it and explore to be able to understand, how exactly that works. I mean, it sounds like something off of, a sci-fi movie or something, but
Right.
apparently go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think somehow a lot of stuff are connected one way or the other. Ever since I started doing this show, I started off as someone wanting to find answers about stuff that I experienced. And the more I've done it, and the more I've looked into things, the more I've talked with people, I've changed my perspective a lot from where I was to where I am now. I'm more open-minded to certain aspects. I'm still skeptical a lot of the time, but for me, I think a lot of these weird phenomena are somehow related one way or the other. And I don't know how to describe it other than, I'm not saying it's all interdimensional. I'm not saying it's all demons or spirits or whatever. But I feel like a lot of these things are all connected.
And it does seem like there are certain hot spots. You know what I'm saying? Like it seems like there's areas that have so many stories about hauntings and spooky things and supernatural things, and also the extraterrestrial factor does seem to be there too. So I feel like there's something to it.
Yeah. Again, I think and I've explained this before a few times, but when it comes to paranormal stuff, let's just take when people see like shadow figures or spirits or something like that. What if they're actually seeing a different wavelength, a different frequency, vibration patterns, or whatever? It's like a different dimension, a different reality, and somehow it's bleeding into ours. So the things that we're seeing and interacting with, we're calling ghost. What if the ghost realm is just a different level, a different plane? Like we're on the 3D world. What if they're the fifth dimension or something, and they're somehow down on ours? I've tried to watch videos that explain stuff like this, and there was one from, I think it was like the 1970s or 80s. But we can't see past the 3D world. Like they think time is the fourth dimension, but they say there's different dimensions past that. We don't have the capabilities of going to those dimensions, but what if something else has the capabilities of coming into ours? So
Right.
that's
Because
how.
I've seen it explained in a sense that because we are like the third dimension is a low dimension,
Right.
and we're not able to like perceive other dimensions any more than like something that is one dimensional, like a dot, could perceive a dog. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like how can you possibly perceive something, so much more complex? So there's just, no way supposedly that we can perceive those things, but like you said, maybe they can come here and perceive us, and like we feel that energy in our space, but I really don't know. I mean,
Like I said, that's
like I said,
yeah. To me, it's hard to describe. It's hard to explain, but that's how I come across and how I feel about things. And I don't try to get all spiritual or religious or anything to it, but that's how I feel like we are what we are. We are just, some people call us light beings, some people call us this or that. A lot of the time, I feel like we're living in a simulation, and I don't mean it like the Matrix, but like the way things
mhm,
are set up, it's very, very simulated. And I feel
mhm.
like the way the world's going nowadays, it's almost getting predictable. And like this, I feel like everything's a stage at this point. It's just getting the like a big complete joke. And it's hard to describe it, and I don't want to turn everything into like a conspiracy type thing, but for me it's just I feel like everything just seems so fake anymore.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, and when you say like you feel like we're living in a simulation, I think it's I think we can see the programming. That's why it feels fake. It's like we can see where the program is working. It's almost like it's it's like you can see the system at work, and you can see the programming keeping everybody in check like they're supposed to be. And how could you not? I mean, how could you not see it? And it's almost like somebody introduced me to the term NPC not too
Hmm.
long ago, a couple of years ago, and I started to see people so differently, because there's just the people that just get up and go to work and pay their taxes and eat their dinner and go to bed, and they're just normal people. And then there's people like me who are just completely neurodivergent, who just don't fit. And, you know, I've always wanted to be one of those people that just fit in and was normal. I just felt like it was some kind of failure on my part to be normal. I couldn't be like everyone else. And then as I've grown up and watched this whole thing play out, I realized that that's just not who I am. I think there are some people who are just here. They're part of the simulation, part of the programming. And then there's other people who are, some people say star seeds or whatever, that are just different, and I don't think we're the same at all. And the ones of us that can see it are the ones, that are, I don't want to say special, like it's a good thing, like, because it sucks. It sucks to be able to see all this. It sucks to, be woke, as some people call it. It's it's not a good thing. It doesn't make me feel special. It makes me feel kind of crazy most of the time, and burdened. You know, I've been asked before, I talk to people about this kind of stuff a lot. I've been asked, if I would choose to go back to sleep. And oh my gosh, there's such a huge part of me that would, because seeing the things that I can see and experience, and the things that I can, has not been an enjoyable process. It's been terrifying and weird. And I mean, I've almost put myself in a mental institution multiple times over this stuff because it's heavy. It's a lot when you can see the way everything's working, and there's nothing you can do about it other than just work on yourself.
Right. I've had this conversation a lot with people, not so much on air or just people I'm friends with outside of obviously the podcast or anything, but I feel like when you mention NPCs, I've said that a few times that it sucks going through life realizing that you're just an NPC in a simulation game. And I feel like that's what majority of us are because we don't have any control over the actual outcome of anything. We see things, we want to change things, we don't like how things are going, and everyone's like, oh, we have the ability to change it. We really don't. They're like,
No,
oh, we need to all, we get together, we outnumber everybody. It doesn't work that way. Like, you're not going to get everyone on the same wavelength. You're not going to get everyone on the same mindset because
Right.
we're programmed to not get along, and we're coerced into not getting along, and we're brainwashed to not get along. That is literally society. So,
Right.
we
Yeah,
do.
it's part of the programming. It's because because the propaganda has been weaponized to keep us in hate with each other, whether it's over race or religion or politics. Those are the big three that keeps all of us peasants divided amongst each other so that we can't do anything about it. That's the program.
Yeah, that's how I feel. And anyone listening, I think that's at this point. If you don't like hearing that, then I'm sorry, but that's just how I am.
The most thing I figured out in this whole thing, the central answer that I've come up with, and I may tell you in 6 months that is, that's changed, but as I've learned all of this, and I've grown, and I've researched and meditated and struggled, the central answer that I do have is that we have to evolve within ourselves, and that we have to ascend, because apparently there's like we're like this is a prison planet. And in order for you to escape the prison planet, after death, you have to ascend. You have to raise your vibration higher than this existing vibration, because apparently Earth is a low density prison planet, and this is where you're sent to suffer and learn your lessons. But then supposedly, once people get sent here to learn their lessons, they get caught up in the negativity and the low vibration, and they become low vibration themselves, because the system is designed to send people after you to cause you trauma from the youngest ages, and to, destroy the goodness that's in you, so that you can't ascend out of here. And then you're just stuck here. You just reincarnate right back. And that to raise your vibration is really difficult, especially as you're learning all these horrible things, and you're like, how am I supposed to raise my vibration and ascend when I see things for what they are? And that's depressing. So it's like a catch-22, and in so many ways.
I think we're all just kind of stuck until, kind of like what you were just saying, basically until we're able to escape and move on to the next level. The next stage, what I was saying earlier, kind of is we're stuck on the 3D level. We got to figure out the tunnel or whatever to get to that flag to go to level 4 or whatever, like old Mario reference, just because.
Right, definitely.
We're just doing the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, and it's crazy, but hopefully, through places, through different people discussing things, and different social media and people coming together and sharing things that they've learned, we can keep putting the puzzle pieces together and come up with some more answers that'll help us get out of here, or at least make the journey seem a little less lonely. That's what I've encountered so far. Just so many people that have experienced similar things, and talking to people makes you feel less alone and less crazy when you realize so many people have had these experiences, whether it's supernatural or extraterrestrial or, both. You feel like, okay, I might not be a nut job and I'm not alone in this, so let's keep talking about it and see who we can help and what we can accomplish along the way, I guess.
Right. No, I agree. I think we all need to try and be the best that we can to each other. And I say that in the sense that there's too much negativity in the world. I don't want to contribute to the negativity, but at the same time, I'm only able to do what I can do. But I think we have the ability to be better. And I think once we're all better, we get to move on to the next stage. So if that's what I'm doing here, if it helps people, maybe it'll help me get to the next stage.
Right. It can't hurt. If nothing else, it can't hurt.
I think we can probably wrap this one up, but is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we do?
I think I'm good for now.
Okay. Well, Amber, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
Well, thank you. I'm a little nervous, but hopefully you got some stuff you could use.
Nah, it's good. I don't do a whole lot of editing. I always tell this to everyone else. If you come on my show, I might edit a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it's just how it goes. I might cut out some silent spots here because I'm usually muted. So it takes me a second to find the unmute button to say something, but I clean up some stuff here and there. So I think we have a good episode.
That's great.
But no, I definitely appreciate you coming on here tonight and talking with me. And for anyone that's been listening, just know I appreciate you guys. Thanks for sticking around. And thanks to Amber. But we're going to head on out. So thanks for listening and good night, everyone. And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltales.com. Just get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil Tales in my headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptid creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, dogman, they're out there in the dark. But the truth is out there like an neon spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control, trying to keep us blind. But I'll be fooled, gonna use my whole mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they hide, the truth they won't show. Dominate our society, they keep us in chains. But I'm standing tall, it's time to break the reins. Control, trying to keep us blind. But I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history